بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Once again, just sitting here doing some reading, some preparing, and I thought I would share something I found certainly not new, but still newly disturbing, which is the predatory nature of modern global culture as it is exported by the West. And that has to do with the obsession about sex. And so, just happened to, like many of you, I happened to be on social media for a minute today. And of course, in the advertising was for this new show, of course, now by the darling of liberal, woke, diversity quota media, Hollywood, called The Sex Lives of College Girls. And it was co-written, as I said, by the darling of them, Mandy Kaling, and I don't know, some other dude, Justin Noble. But of course, Mandy Kaling, right, being of South Asian descent, and now who is, given this place within the pantheon of fawahish. It's really disgusting to see how Western civilization come global civilization incessantly targets women, and particularly their private parts, which ironically is one of the arguments that Western feminists, intellectuals, academics, and others say is the obsession with Islam about modesty. And so what this perhaps shows, right, if they're willing to listen, is that yes, obviously a woman is something to be concerned about in your civilization, and any civilization that doesn't give a damn about its women is doomed to a very poor fate. And yet, it seems that increasingly Western civilization is only concerned about the unhinging and the freeing of any kind of objective morality. And so I happened to see this, and I was like, my God, even now, they're not even hiding anything in the title. Just 1 or 2 decades ago, we had Sex and the City, and that was, of course, provocative enough because it had the word sex in it. And now we're literally coming out, right, the sex lives of college girls. And the only way that the title itself, the only way you get a show created like this, I don't care how tongue-in-cheek that they may attempt it to be, is due to the impact of pornography on modern civilization. Because one of the aspects of pornography is voyeurism, right? Pornography is a voyeuristic thing. It wants to, literally, it's giving you a window into a frame into people's sex lives, right? And so, interestingly enough, of course, it's not just the sex lives of people, but of particularly college girls, and more specifically, women. And what is tragic is that how this encourages and even applies a certain kind of pressure under the presumption that if a girl goes off to college, she will have sex. Now, if she's married to her husband, then, bismillah, there's nothing, blameworthy. In fact, quite the opposite. That would be laudable about that. But of course, within this is further packaged in this assumption is that this will be fornication. And so it's a further attempt at the normalization of fornication. And it, for myself, as as a man that has a daughter, that has a young girl that's going to come into the blossoming of her womanhood very shortly. My daughter's 10, and inshallah, God willing, I assume that my daughter will begin that process of coming into womanhood, at least from the Islamic point of view, probably in the next few years, right? May Allah preserve me, through that process. And what really gives me anxiety is not that as much as the environment of which she will emerge into, one in which women are targeted night and day to exploit themselves and to be exploited by such a toxic and cannibalistic kind of culture when it comes to sexuality. And so I'm actually reminded of something that I wrote, I guess back earlier in the year, and it was a quote from Robert E. Howard, which, if you're not familiar, he is the author and the creator of the Conan the Barbarian comics. And so he was a pulp writer and in some ways has been dismissed as that. But he had a very interesting reflection in which he wrote, and at the time I believe he was writing to a girl he was engaged to. He said, quote, "You see, girl, when the civilization begins to decay and die, the only thing men or women think about is the gratification of their body's desires. They become preoccupied with sex. It colors their thinking, their laws, their religion, every aspect of their lives." Very interesting comment coming from somebody who is not by any stretch of the means thought of to be some kind of conservative firebrand. This reminds me of a verse in the 23rd chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Mu'minun. And you can find this in the 71st or the 72nd, depending on which riwayah that you read from. So, for instance, where Allah Ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, لَوْ اتَّبَعَ الْحَقُّ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ لَفَصَلَتِ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَنْ فِيهِنَّ. That if the truth, right, if objective morality, if what constitutes right and wrong, if it were to follow the whims and the desires of people, then without a doubt, لَفَسَدَتِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, that the heavens and the earth themselves would be corrupted, and وَمَنْ فِيهِنَّ, and everyone therein. And indeed, this is what we are seeing. بَلْ أَتَيْنَاهُمْ بِذِكْرِهِمْ وَهُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِهِمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. But that is not the case. We indeed have given mankind an objective criterion for morality. We gave it to them and they were reminded, but they have turned away from this reminder. And, this is one of those things that reminds me, I had a young man not that long ago. He came and he had asked me some advice about, he wants to be an actor. And so he had asked me his advice about going into acting. And I said, well, I presume that perhaps there is a form of acting outside of Hollywood. And so I suppose we can put the answer to that question really in kind of two different categories. We can address it that, well, we definitely do not want to participate in the Hollywood aspect of acting and filmmaking because of, precisely this issue. But, I said, if you're going to do it, then the question is, how are you going to preserve, not simply your values? Because let's even step back a moment. My values are not really my values. My values are al-haq. Right? My values are the truth as it has been dictated by Allah in His book, through His Prophet, and to His community, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So let's even have a bit more humility when we want to talk about the issue of morality and values, it's not about what I think. And in fact, that's precisely, or one of the things that the verse is getting at, right? That law, right? وَلَوْ اتَّبَعَ الْحَقُّ, if the truth were to follow what? أَهْوَأَهُمْ, if the truth were to follow their desires, right? Rather, we have to follow the truth. And so, getting back to this, this new program coming out, it's just really quite tragic. I would love to have a conversation with the Mindy Kalings and the Justin, what is this guy's name, Justin Nobles, and these people of the world, who undoubtedly, on one hand, I'm sure, without even having to check, if I were allowed to bet, if I were a betting man, I would put dollars to dimes, that without a doubt, these people will be Me Too, pro Me Too. They will be pro all of these kind of feminist things. And yet these very same people are creating programming that even in its very subjective nature is predatory and harmful to girls and to women. Because let's face it, in this society, there's virtually no more screen. There is no more hijab. There is no more hedges. There's no more barrier, hardly anymore, between children and adults. And so when you create this kind of thing, undoubtedly, little girls are going to see it. And how do you justify that as somebody that would consider themselves to be a feminist, which I'm sure if I were, just to take a moment to go and look, probably on her Wikipedia page, I'm doing this now, just for the sake of argument, I would probably guess so. Let's see if anything, anyway, what does it say? Yeah, I mean, just, she is, undoubtedly, there's no even need to look. Right? There's no need to even look. And so it's a great irony that these people themselves, until they turn back to reality, they turn back to objective truth, and stop playing a role in destroying the world around them, right? Not simply just worrying about saving the whales and saving the dolphins and saving the trees and all of these things. But to stop playing a destructive role in the shape of our society, then we will continue to have a popular culture that will continue to feed upon, prey upon, and call to depravity. And so just a quick reflection. I'm sure this is nothing really new or earth-shattering for any of you that may see this. It was just troubling, and it caused some connections to fire off in my head that I wanted to share, that I thought might be just a good reminder for us. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.